Hey, Gaijin Geigers, Patrick here. Or am I Gaijin Guy? And now I'm Patrick again. See, the glasses do the whole thing. And I'm here with a manga haul right here on this channel. What's it called? Gaijin Guy. All right, so let's get into it. Um, I went up to Fukuoka for some reason. Oh yes, to drop my daughter off to hang with her friends and spend the night, a couple nights. And she could have taken the bus, but I was like, I don't mind driving her up there. I like driving in my car. So I stopped by the Mandarake in uh, Tenjin, I think. Is it or Hakata? You know what? I don't remember. Uh, the one. I stopped at the Mandarake that's in Fukuoka proper. There's another one further north in Kitakyushu, and that I did not go that far. Um, I went there, and besides going to Mandarake, I also visited the l'Institut Français, which is like a French language institute. I mean, it's basically a French language conversation school. And they had a mediathek, like basically a media library in there. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go check it out. And it's completely free to use. This is in Fukuoka. It's completely free to use, and but if you want to check stuff out, you have to get a membership. But they had a ton of French comics, bande dessinée, some of them translated into Japanese. They had a bunch of French films. So the fact that there is like a place you can go and read French comics for free, that's pretty awesome. So anyway, my Mandarake trip, I picked up, this was in a bag, so I wasn't sure exactly what was in it. Um, but this is Furusato no Yokai Ko. So it's like hometown yokai studies, something like that. Um, and it's basically, it says here on the subtitle that uh, there's souls in everything. There's weirdness in everything, and that everything has a soul and everything is weird, which I love that sentiment. Um, I wasn't sure what this was going to be, but I opened it up, and it's a lot of full page art, or half, like full page art with uh, descriptions of the yokai. And Mizuki has done a bunch of these kind of things. But I thought, yeah, you know what, this is pretty cool. I'm going to use it as a reference and inspiration for my own art, you know, uh, just because, like as I don't really position myself as a yokai expert, like if people ask me, what's your favorite yokai? I actually don't know. I don't know. Um, And there's a bunch of yokai that I'm not familiar with. So I'm not trying to become an expert, but I do want to become more knowledgeable, and I want to create more art of yokai. I actually have only drawn uh, a handful of art, mostly kappa, you know, mostly kappa, but would like to maybe add a couple of other different kinds of monsters to my repertoire. Oh, this is one that I recognize from uh, Mizuki's stuff. You guys know, if you watch this channel, I tend to, and it wasn't my intention or design, but I tend to focus on the same creators again and again. And I think it's because it just happens to be I'm really into these particular folks. It's like Mizuki Shigeru, Shirato Sanpei, Matsumoto Reiji. I know I go on and on about these guys, and I should probably, spread out a little bit. I try to. But still riding on that Mizuki train. Recently, oh boy, I should have it here somewhere. Oh, okay. Well, I'll use this instead because I have different copies. I have different copies. There we go. Recently, I've been looking through the Akuma-kun character, okay? Akuma-kun is a really interesting Mizuki character. There's several versions. In fact, there's like three different names of the character besides its nickname Akuma-kun, like Devil Boy or whatever. And this is the first iteration of Akuma-kun, and it was for the rental comics market. Okay, and believe it or not, I believe that this kid's name is Suzuki. No, 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 it's Matsushita Ichiro or something like that. Um, but the rental comics version apparently was going to be 5 volumes, and he had to basically like just cut it short. Um, wasn't selling. But this is it's an interesting story because it's like this genius, one in every 10,000 years born genius child, uh, is super, super interested in the occult because he wants to bring forth a demon and bind it to a contract to force the world to become a better place. He wants things to be fair in the world. Fair. He doesn't think like that people who, and his father is one of the most powerful people in the world. He is like the president of a electric company, something like Panasonic, basically. And so he wants everything to be equal, and wants, if you do good, good things happen to you. He wants that whole system to work out. Some people label this as kind of Marxist, which I don't think it's actually Marxist. It's just, you get more like, it's more like karmic, like instant karma kind of situation where you get what you're supposed to get, what you deserve for the hard work you put into your effort, something like that. It doesn't really go deep into uh, any kind of system, just that there's people with a disproportionate amount of power and money, and maybe that isn't the best system for everybody. So that's the premise, okay? And it was an interesting premise. And so, like, for that to happen, for him to bring forth this demon, okay, he needs like he's gathering 12 basically disciples, and in this story he doesn't achieve that. In fact, like, some of his disciples gang up and they have him assassinated. The end kind of deal. I actually haven't read it all. I'm about halfway through. It's super interesting, by the way. So this is, I've had this for a while. I have another like 1 volume version that was a gift, or these were the gift, and that was the one that I bought, I think. Um, so, like I said, there's 3 different versions of this character. Um, there was a live action TV show. There was animated TV shows, multiple. I think a recent one on Netflix, and I think they abandoned the like the original setting or the original idea, of I think they do. But anyway, for some reason he brought back this original character, Matsushita, and he decided to. It's basically retelling the story, but he makes it to the end and gathers all the disciples, all 12. I have not read this yet, so I can't tell you how it ends, but you can see that there's been slight design change. I don't think it's a positive. I mean, I have no problem with the original design. I think that he decided to make it a little bit more Kitaro, Kitaro looking. Um, but yeah, so anyway, I knew that this was a different, like an updated version of the story that kind of made it to the ending. So yeah, and I've kind of decided I was going to keep my eye out for these, and there they were in Mandarake, so got these. Okay. Wow, that took a while to get through. Okay, I also saw this in the books about manga section, and this is like Shirato Sanpei, Manga no Miryoku. In other words, what's interesting about Shirato's comics. And I think a big selling point for me was that this has an explication. It has a little bit of like analysis of Menashi, which is one of my favorite of his short stories, like the No Eyes story that he originally published in rental comics form about like a wild feral girl who is actually, I think she was escaping being forced to become a kunoichi ninja, and she's pretending to be a boy, feral boy, selling these blind fish, menashi, and so it kind of refers to the fish and has some other references. So yeah, I decided to get that. Um, And then they have one section which is the rental comics section, and those are getting, as many of us know, more expensive as time goes on. But because I'm kind of into the werewolf feral child thing, this Wolf Boy comic, they had a rental comics of this. This is number 2. They also had number 3, but the guy warned me. The guy's really nice. We talked before. He liked my T-shirt. I had my Echo Echo Azarak T-shirt. Um, he told me that the third volume doesn't actually have a cover. That's a printed cover. And I was like, well, like I've kind of reached my budget limit anyway, so I'm just gonna get this number 2. I've got several versions of this Wolf Boy, and I still haven't read it. Okay, so I'm kind of saving up as I do, and I don't know if y'all noticed that. Yeah, over the last couple years, I haven't been as active as I wanted to be on this channel. I started a new job. It takes up a lot of my energy, and it's a creative focused job, so uh, there's a lot of my creative energy goes into my job, which means I have the well is not as deep always, when I'm going to this, but you know what, it's in pretty good shape. The pages are still lighter colored. They're not the dark brown that you sometimes get. um, the any damage is marked, like this page has some rips or whatever is marked clearly, and I'm okay with that, but I like getting to the rental comics version of these. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think this was weekly comics first, and then they made a rental comics version of it because Shirato's stuff was still popular in the rental comics field. So he would do that. So like there's the Sasuke Shonen comics, and later I think it was a different like magazine or something like that. Maybe no, maybe it was Sunday. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Don't quiz me. But anyway, he did Sasuke in the uh, weekly I think Shonen was monthly though. Anyway, he did it in the regular like boys comics format. Even though a lot of those were like the furoku, like the extra comic that comes with. I could just show you. Why don't I just show you? You know, these puppies, these little puppies that would come with. So Sasuke was like originally in this form, okay, and then did like a rental comics version to, also get it in that market. And I think that's what's happening here too. So, it's not like this is the original version, but I wonder if there's any differences. Probably not. Probably not if the weekly one was first, because that would have an editor above you, and so it would tend to be quite tight, the rent and Shirato stuff is tight no matter what, but the rental comics stuff, there's a little more leeway there, okay, especially when you're publishing them yourself or your buddy's publishing them. So yeah, so anyway, happy to have this. Gonna fit really nicely up on my shelf of Shirato stuff, which I somehow continue to find stuff to fill it with. Now I talked about I need to branch out a little more. This is a thing. This is a series right here, which I never heard of. It's these covers sold it for me. First of all, Baron Yoshimoto. I saw the name. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna look at him. I gotta look at him. And then the covers, especially this like faux Golden Bat, faux Batman on the cover. And this series is called Four Yontaro Ichihime. In other words, four taros, four dudes, because they all have taro in their name. And taro is often translated as boy or guy or something like that, right? Because it's so ubiquitous as a boy's name. Four taros, one princess, one hime. Okay, so there's Himeko. She's the hime. She's the princess. Doesn't mean she's literally a princess. It just means she's of the female persuasion. The subtitle says it's a science fiction adventure katsugeki action show series, whatever. So you've got the four taros and the one princess with the crazy hair. They crash on an island and they witness something which is a very sexually suggestive alien thing happening, and a secret meeting of these alien overlords trying to take over the Earth. And so it's kind of like They Live. And the main bad guy is this gorilla guy who always has his tongue sticking out. Honestly, I was looking for the names of the four dudes. Oh, here it is. Okay. So there's Saitaro, Chotaro, Eitaro, Bontaro, and then Himeko. So, oh look, Mad TV. It's actually a reference to Mad Magazine. Baron Yoshimoto was made his debut around the same time as Monkey Punch, and Monkey Punch was very clear that he was inspired by Mort Drucker and Mad Magazine. So it's very likely that Baron Yoshimoto, who also often has a very Western American comics type of touch, that he was a big fan of American comics. He was probably into Mad Magazine as well, but it's there's all kinds of weird stuff going on in here. So I was happy to pick up these two volumes, Yontaro Ichihime. All right, Baron Yoshimoto. I would like to meet him. He seems like somebody interesting to meet. So that was my budget for my Mandarake visit. More recently, just last weekend, I went to Beppu, which is like a big hot springs mecca, I guess, if you want to use that word. And there is a used bookstore there called Book Boss. And last time I went there, I sat at the counter and chatted with them a little bit. Apparently, somebody there is a huge fan of Kikawa Koji, who is a big, wasn't big, okay, he was never major, but he's well known, pop star from basically the 80s. He did do like a collaboration, like a group called Complex with him and the guitarist from Bowie, which is like one of my favorite Japanese rock bands, and so pop rock. So he did kind of keep performing into the 90s. He still does concerts and stuff. In fact, I created an animation to be used at one of his concerts. It didn't get used. It didn't get finished in time. Like I turned it in, but the person who was coordinating everything didn't have time to put it into the show itself. Which is unfortunate, but I tell people that I made it anyway. you know. And I met him, Kikawa Koji. This is I was in Azabu Juban, which is like a trendy area, and I went to a bar, and I saw this big guy, really tall, wide shoulders, and I was like, that guy looks just like Kikawa Koji, who I knew because in college a friend of mine was a fan and let me borrow CDs, and I learned several of his songs that I would sing at karaoke. So I'm in the bar, and I talked to one of the staff, and I was like, that guy looks just like Kikawa Koji. And he goes, yeah, that's Kikawa Koji. I was like, no shit. That guy, I said, I'm a fan. He said, you should talk to him. I was like, really? All right. And so I went up and I said, Kikawa Koji-san, I'm a huge fan. And he looked at me and he goes, you were a liar. There's no way you're a fan of mine. And I was like, and I rattled off several of the songs. I said, I sing these at karaoke, Waranai Sunset and Maririn, and so he was like, oh, okay. And so we were talking a little bit, and he was drinking with two other people, and I was being very rude because I just like jumped right in the middle. And I turned to my left, and there was this kid who I'd seen on TV, and I was like, oh, I saw you on TV. You're from that group, Spam. And he goes, SMAP. It's SMAP, not Spam. And I said, oh, okay, cool. What's your name? And he said, oh, Kimura Takuya. And I was like, oh, okay. Not knowing that someday he would be the huge, huge star that he would eventually become. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, Kikawa Koji. And I was like, yeah, not interested. And then across from them was 80s idol Hayami Yu. And I know she speaks English really well, but I was like, oh, Hayami Yu, hey. So anyway, Kikawa Koji. So, yeah, being rude to celebrities, that's what I'm all about. Um, so anyway, I really got off on a tangent there, didn't I? That's what I do. I tangentize. Okay, so I'm in Beppu, and they have, I go through the stacks, okay? They have shelves that are by author, okay? But the ones that I'm mostly interested in and the stuff I'm mostly interested in is like a little bit more hard to find stuff. They keep that right at the counter. So there's a guy at the counter who's trying to talk to them, and I'm like, could you move your knees a little bit? I'm trying to. So anyway, I got this is by Komatsu Kazuhiko, and this is a Hyakiyagyo, like the parade of 100 ghosts. Uh, this is the mystery of the Hyakiyagyo Emaki, which is one of those huge picture scrolls, right? And so it goes through, it's got a bunch of details. And again, I'm thinking the same thing that I was thinking with that Mizuki book is like, it'd be good for some inspiration. In fact, there was this one right off the bat that looks like a Tengu running with bones that are on fire. I was like, I like that. I don't know what that's about, but I like that. So yeah, so I picked this up, just as it's a regular, it's a book with a bunch of details, comparing different picture scrolls and trying to kind of trace back which picture scrolls inspired which other picture scrolls because they're too close, like they're obvious copies. Uh, but it looks like some picture scrolls were like an amalgam of other picture scrolls. So, you know me, monsters and manga. That's my whole deal. They also had this um, anime comic from the very first uh, Space Cruiser Yamato Battle Cosmos Ship Battle Cruise. There's so many different English versions of the title. The U.S. It was broadcast in the U.S. as Star Blazers. That's how I first came across it, and I might have possessed this sometime in the past, maybe, but I don't think so. I think I had one of the later movie ones. But anyway, it's number one, so I'm like, yeah, that's hard not to get to add to my Matsumoto collection. So I got this. Uh, 300 yen. That's not bad. That's not bad. That place, by the way, they know what they have. They price accordingly. You're not going to get any like super like, whoa, this is, they're priced accordingly. They had some stuff there which I thought about, but yeah, beyond my budget for that trip. Another thing I came across was katakoi saburo. Katakoi saburo. If I was going to translate katakoi, it's almost like kata omoi, which is like a unrequited love. So maybe there's a love element in this. Beautiful art. And this is by a former Kashihon uh, Reader's Page contributor and Kumamoto native Matsumori Tadashi. And I know I've introduced a work or two of his on this channel before. It's written by Koike Kazuo, the legend. But just beautiful art, and I just wanted to have. You know what? I missed it when he came. He came here, and I had another thing. I couldn't go. But if he ever comes back to Kumamoto to do like a meet and greet, I've got a couple of different things for, to talk about. So anyway, yeah, very, very talented guy. He should have been more well known, more appreciated in his time. So yeah, book boss in Beppu. Um, Also while in Beppu, I at the convenience store, I saw this new, actually very scary Japanese old tales and legends. And, I'm a sucker for this kind of thing. And I figured I might be stuck because my wife was off to see a concert. That's basically why we're there. I was not going to that concert, um, but I thought I might have some time on my hands. And this has a bunch of famous tales like, Yuki Onna and Momotaro. But like there's a scary spin on them. Um, there's one essay at the end, so it's a very short essay. So I'm not expecting different takes on old tales. I like that kind of thing. So yeah, so I picked this up. Crappy cover, hate it, but the title is intriguing. Um, Also, I neglected to mention, and I don't really do this kind of thing, but like for my art, I bought some books. I was in the mood to do. This is just at the Tsutaya bookstore. Uh, I have Pose catalogs now and then this one has a lot of sometimes kind of sexually suggestive, but basically like a bunch of poses in here. And just, as idea fodder. I picked that up only to find I had already bought this for my daughter, and it's upstairs. This is the second time I've done this. I bought a book that I already had in the house somewhere. Uh, I'm gonna have to be careful about that. Um, but it kind of goes to show that I don't use those books enough. The ones that I actually buy, it's the same thing with my French. It's like I buy them and I feel like I've studied. So, it's not a good habit. But I have become better. I force myself. Now when I buy a new book, I immediately open it up, take pictures of stuff I want to use, and use it right away. And I did use this one. I also bought this one because hair. It's like I'm very unsatisfied with the hairstyles that I've been giving my characters, and so just as like a kind of a recipe book, some ideas for some hair. I like how this presented it because almost every other how to draw has like 2 pages of hair, and that's it. And this is a more detailed, like, really goes into the gravity and the weight and all kinds of things and the highlights. So I got that. Uh, you think I'm done? I'm not. I'm just going basically uh, in order, in order of like when I got these books. Uh, a great surprise landed on my doorstep, and this time it's much better condition, though not perfect. Better condition than the first volume is The Legend of Kamui, English version, from Drawn and Quarterly, Shirato Sanpei. Uh, you know, it's often written with the N. I sometimes write it with the N. Sometimes I write it with the M, because when you pronounce the Japanese followed by a P, it tends to M, sound like an M. Um, so good. I really enjoyed the first one. I can't wait to, even though like immediately after I read the first volume of this, I kept reading the Japanese version. I'm so excited to jump into this one and read it again. And it's a big size. You gotta love that. Um, Great. I know I don't really introduce a lot of English versions of manga, and that's because what happens is somebody will say, "Oh, we're coming out with an English version of this," and I'm like, "Wow, that sounds really interesting." And what I'll do is I'll track down a Japanese copy and I'll read that. Um, if there's a super interesting essay or some background or something like that, I might pick up the English versions, but most times I'm just going to read the Japanese version. So, anyway, thank you for sticking with me. I went off on several a tangent. I hope I didn't make your eyes roll back into your head. I glad to have you here. I really appreciate everyone who's stuck with me this so far. We've breached 700 followers. Wow. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you here again soon, right here on. Oh my God, is that Patrick? No, it's Gaijin Guy.